Well, good morning. Welcome to the garden. I'm glad you're all here with us today. I don't know about you, but I suffered from post-Easter fatigue all week. So this is a way for us to get rejuvenated and get moving forward again. I want to say welcome to this Lebanon youth group, right? Somewhere in Lebanon? What church? Okay, with the Children's Home. The United Methodist Children's Home is in Lebanon, so we are so glad you're here. Welcome. And I don't know where else you're going, but I guarantee you're probably not going to experience anything quite like this, wherever it is. But anyway, we're glad you're here. So bring your shovels. Did you bring your shovels with you? So we can use ready hands and hearts. So anyway, glad you're all here this morning. Now, this morning we're talking about gardening, and my dad was a gardener, and I mean a real gardener. We had this really big garden down back behind our house, and we grew absolutely everything there. It was his pride and joy. And I can remember him getting all the starts ready and getting his seeds all sorted out and bought and ready to go, and then planting all that, and then taking such good care of it so that it would grow properly and produce the kind of vegetables that he wanted it to produce. And we had everything down there. We had potatoes and tomatoes and corn and green peppers and onions and radishes and green beans and peas and asparagus and virtually anything you could name. Now, I think probably one disappointment he had in me was that I didn't have the same passion for getting out there and digging in the dirt that he did. But I certainly enjoyed eating all the food there was to eat from it. Now, my mom and dad used to can or freeze the things that came out of the garden, and we would feast on that all winter long. And then before you knew it, it was time to till the soil again and start this whole process over. Now, this all happened when I was growing up, and actually my dad continued to have a garden until probably just a couple of years before he died. And it was something he really, really enjoyed. But all of our neighbors did the same thing. Almost everybody I knew had a garden. I don't remember going much to the store, or we would go down to the little neighborhood market and maybe get some bread or some milk, but that was about it. Everything we ate was stuff that we grew. And I think it was probably pretty good for us, pretty healthy for us. As I think about that, it occurs to me that probably a lot of kids today don't really know much about gardening because they don't have that experience of seeing a garden actually come into being. And maybe they think food just comes from the supermarket. And so that's one of the good things that we'll be able to do in the course of this garden is help children understand a little bit more as to how food actually comes into being and how important it is for our good health and our well-being. And so today we're starting the process of putting this garden into being. Lots of planning has been done, and now it's a matter of making it happen. And where we're going to be working today is down just off Michigan Road behind the whole old Jubilee Bowl, as Beth has said to you. And we're actually going to be moving dirt and filling that in the beds that are there. We have another garden, a smaller garden, that's going to be at Greenbrier Elementary School on Ditch Road. And that's going to be kind of our educational garden, that we can help kids understand the process of what it takes to grow the vegetables that we can all benefit from. And so I really want to say a special word of thanks to Glick Community Center, to St. Luke's Church, and to Washington Township Schools for making all this possible, for securing the place for us to do this and to help us to get to work on really making this happen and giving this a little bit of start with our seed money. Hunger is a big issue in the city of Indianapolis, and this is going to be able to help a little bit. It's just a little part of it. But even though it's just a little bit can make a big difference to someone who's hungry. And so hopefully this will make a difference in our world. And you see, it's really important that we do, in fact, give access to good food. You may have read that there is an issue in the city of Indianapolis. There were some news reports that came out within the last 2 or 3 weeks that labeled Indianapolis as the worst city for food access for our population. And what they mean by that is food access. You have food access when you're within 5 minutes walking distance from a grocery. In Indianapolis, only 5% of our residents are within 5 minutes of a grocery. That means 95% of our population is living in what's referred to as a food desert. Hopefully, this garden will help a little bit in alleviating that situation. Now, I don't know how many of you have actually done gardening. There are a lot of easier things we could be doing, like throwing a little money somewhere and supporting something that way, but it won't have the same impact, the same meaning, and we won't know it quite as much because gardening is hard work. It can be back-breaking work to do what we have to do. And fortunately, we have a group of folks who know what they're doing. There are experts, and they've been involved in the pre-planning and figuring out how many beds we need and how big they need to be in the space that we have, and getting all the stuff put together. And they're the people we're going to rely on. And the rest of us can do the grunt work. There are lots of things that are needed in that way. I'll tell you one thing that I probably should stay away from, and that is planting anything that we expect to live very long. Because it seems like most live things I get don't stay live forever. But maybe this will help. Maybe these people will be very helpful. But I can water, I can weed, I can do that kind of thing too. So I intend to do as much as I possibly can. And I hope you will too, because we certainly need a lot of hands and hearts. So we've got the folks who can help us. They've already been doing a lot of the work and planning. And so now it's a matter of digging in and really getting going in the process. Now, as I was preparing for this message, I did quite a bit of reading and research on gardens. And it's interesting, all the various perspectives on what it takes to really get a garden going. And there are a lot of steps involved in it, in making it happen. And certainly, there were some similarities in all of those things, but one of the things that was stressed every single time as being the most important thing had to do with the soil itself. You have to have good soil if you want to have good production there. And so it talked a lot about all these articles talked a lot about getting the soil ready to receive the seed that we're going to plant. Now, here we've got to have good dirt that's been delivered, and we're going to be putting it in the beds. But for those of us who would have gardens, say, in our backyard, usually we just take whatever's there, and we want to turn that part into a garden, and you have to turn the soil to do that. But there's some work that has to be done for that soil to be really usable, and you have to get rid of all the debris, any twigs and leaves and branches that are there. And then you have to be sure and check for weeds and pull the weeds out by the roots. Because if you don't pull them out by the roots, they'll grow again and will overtake the plants that we put there and choke them out. And so it's important to get the soil ready. And I even learned that there are soil test kits that you can get that can test the soil and tell us what nutrients it needs to have in order to provide the healthiest food possible. The key and most important thing is the soil and the condition of the soil. In fact, one person said that the single greatest leverage point we have for a sustainable and healthy future for 7 billion people is the soil. Healthy soil microbes are vital for healthy people. Well, I think that's a bit of what our Bible passage is talking about. It's talking about gardening. Now, we don't have any reference at all that I could find that Jesus actually ever been a gardener or of growing a garden or being a farmer. And yet we know for sure that he was pretty observant and pretty aware of what was going on. And we knew how he could craft stories that would be told that people understood, that fit in their context. And that's what our Bible passage today is. It's out of Luke's Gospel, and our version is from the Message. Let's look at it, and then we'll think about what he's saying. As they went from town to town, a lot of people joined in and traveled along. He addressed them using this story. A farmer went out to sow his seed. Some of it fell on the road. It was trampled down, and the birds ate it. Other seed fell in the gravel. It sprouted, but withered, because it didn't have good roots. Other seed fell in the weeds. The weeds grew with it and strangled it. Other seed fell on rich earth and produced a bumper crop. And then Jesus said, "Are you listening to this? Really listening?" Now let's think about what he's saying here. We can take it on a couple different levels, actually. You know, the obvious piece is that he's talking about planting seeds and growing a garden. And literally that's what we're doing, and that's what he's talking about. But as with most stories that Jesus told, there's another level to it. There's another meaning to what he was talking about, because he had a twofold purpose, at least a twofold purpose. And actually, there's a part that I didn't include in your program today that is sort of his interpretation of what he was talking about, and is trying to help his disciples and his listeners really figure out what he was meaning. And he explained to them that when they were talking about the seed, he said that was God's word. My lingo would be that was God's love. We're talking about seeds of God's love. The soil would be those who would receive this message of God's love. And you and I know that there's all different kinds of soil. Just as there's different kinds of dirt, there are different kinds of people. And some are ready and open to receive and experience God's love, and some are either resistant or are simply unaware. And so we have to be aware of that and pay attention to that. And sometimes we need to realize that sometimes people just aren't ready. It's not the right time for them. But we still can share God's love in whatever way we can. There are those, though, who are really ready to receive. And Jesus refers to them as good hearts who seize the word and hold on no matter what. Those are the people who are open and accepting and will receive God's love. So let's apply that story to our garden, the garden that we're growing. Yes, we're going to be planting seeds on the literal level. We're going to put those in the garden. But truly, we are planting seeds of God's love. Now, we don't have to talk about God all the time or preach about it all the time. It's just a matter of thinking about why we're doing what we're doing. We're not doing this, well, maybe we are partially doing it because we like to be out in nature and out and working in the dirt, but we're doing it because we want to. We're doing it because we've experienced those touches of God's love in our own hearts. And we know there are people who are hungry in our community, and we want to help in any way that we can. We care because we love, because we know of God's love. And so through our garden, we're sharing our love and our care, maybe without ever preaching the word God. We can simply show it by the way we live our lives and what we do, and in helping people and letting them experience God's love as it may come to them in whatever form. Now, I know that some of you cannot or will not be able to actually help with the garden, and I understand that. But I'll tell you what, we can all carry around with us seeds of God's love, and we can plant them wherever we go. And it happens in every person we encounter. We have all these experiences where we meet people or see people, and we can be sharing God's love just by the way we treat other people, with a little bit of kindness, by treating people with dignity and respect, honoring them as a human being, as an individual. You know, there are some folks out there who feel invisible, as though no one has ever seen them. By seeing and treating people with dignity, with respect, by honoring their presence among us, we can be sharing that gift of God, and it can make an incredible difference in the world. So, in a very real way, we're going to be living the story that Jesus told. We're going to be planting those seeds. We're going to be sharing God's love through our words, through our action, through our deeds. And if everything works right, if we do our best, if the weather cooperates, before long we're going to be able to watch with awe and wonder as those seeds turn into beautiful vegetables and plants and produce. And in the process, be aware that we are sharing God's love. It will be touching the hearts and minds and spirits of those who receive the produce we share. And you know what? I can't think of any better harvest than that.